where are you at right now, Lucienne? Where you were telling me you're over in Oregon or what?
Well, I was in Vancouver, Washington for about 2 weeks a couple of days ago, but I've been in California and in San Francisco for the last almost year.
Wow.
10 months I've been in San Francisco in the Bay Area.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
How's that
very
been?
nice.
It's been great. I mean, this is my hometown, but I haven't lived in San Francisco or the Bay Area for the last 12 years. So
Right.
I'm treating it almost as if it's like a new city versus coming back home.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Because none of what I knew like growing up is still here. And you know, I grew up in the suburbs, but moving back directly into the city proper, into San Francisco proper, I was just like, it's just a new adventure, you know, and my family just so happens to be a little bit closer by than before.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I totally see what you're talking about. Because I also had that like leave and then have homecoming for a little bit. I've been here for about a year and a half now, and it's an interesting thing when you come back as an adult, you know, or like maybe more of an adult rather, because I don't know, you see the world you grew up in, and you grow up with like this adolescent eyes, and you're just kind of I don't know about you, but I was always like judgy of my area. I was like, man, fuck this place, and up here, and then I can't wait to get out of here. And then you go off, and then you come back, and I mean, I'm still kind of like that anyway, but I have more of an appreciation. There's a little bit of me that I'm like, okay, you can fuck off, but like it's more of there's a lot more appreciation and love that I've developed for it now as I've come back and started to see things. Has that been that way for you?
Yeah, it's been interesting to try to just get myself to change my gaze and to change my perspective of it. You know, and I think that also it helps that I have been gone for so long. And high school and adolescence and growing up, you know, it has all of its problems, it has all of its issues, but I think it's so important to just get the F out of the town that you grew up in so that you're able to actually establish who you are and learn who you are and discover what it is that, you know, is at your bones versus just, you know, growing up in your hometown and being close to family. You have to fall and you have to like deal with all of the difficulties away from your family so that you can become a stronger individual. But I think that I've been really challenging myself to look at it from all new perspectives of, you know, a brand new circle of people, a brand new circle of, you know, connections and networks. And I just have a little bit more of a safety net of, you know, I have a friend group or support system of family this time around, you know?
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a refreshing outlook, I think, that it's like, okay, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to tackle it as if it's a whole new environment, even though it is a hometown, right?
It's
so
just a new city.
Right. Yeah, totally. What's been one of the most refreshing things for you about it? Like, or as there'd been an aspect for you, like, oh, I wasn't expecting this thing to happen, or...
Treating it like it's a new city, probably the best thing that has kind of come from it is trying to explore new corners and explore new places. And you know how like when you move to a big city and everybody's transplants, like, you know, 95% of New York City is transplants.
Right.
Seattle also, and San Francisco too. It's very rare to find somebody that's actually from San Francisco, born and raised. And so it's just so cool to meet these people as if like I put myself in the perspective of I'm brand new here. And so I'm meeting all these other people that are brand new. Or come from other areas, like Oregon or Missouri or New York or like wherever, these people that have come to San Francisco to work in tech or work in hospitality or whatever it is. And I think that that's probably the most exciting thing is to meet these people that come to this city, you know, because they saw something that they wanted out of here.
No. That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
That's really cool.
It's cool that you also just came from Vancouver, Washington. I feel like we have lived in a lot of the same spots. You said we both, right after Cornish, moved to New York, which we talked about a little bit earlier. I'm moving to Portland at the end of this week, and Vancouver, Washington is the one of the neighborhoods we're considering settling down in when we get there.
Wow.
No, no fucking way. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we've like both lived in Seattle and then moved right to New York and then lived in the Portland area. And then you're just one step ahead always, right? Now you're in California, but that's next on our list too.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. We're like, okay, yeah, Portland for a while and then Cali. And then, it seems like we have the same geographical track going on here.
Yeah. Well, to be totally honest, I didn't live in Vancouver. I was just visiting one of my best friends for 2 weeks. But I like to consider that I was an honorary roommate and, might end up back there again. Who knows?
Yeah.
And Nick, what that also means too is that you and Bree just got to move over and live in Paris for a little while too. All right. So
That's right. Yeah, we have we still haven't lived in Europe yet. So that's definitely on the list as well.
It's pretty sweet. It's
pretty
sweet.
Yeah.
Everybody should go and try to live in Europe for a little bit just to do it.
Right.
Yes. Okay, wait. So speaking of places to go, have you guys seen the story about Bermuda recently? They have opened their borders to, they call them digital nomads. So people that are able to work from home with just a Wi-Fi connection, and they have opened their borders to U.S. citizens to come in. Now you have to take, of course, the coronavirus test before you go, and they basically make sure that you're not infected. But you can go live in Bermuda for a year. I think the cost is like $263 for the permit, and then you can just go live in Bermuda for the rest of the year. Yeah, you can, and it's cheap too. Like the housing is not so expensive there, and they're doing it, I think, because it's good for the people of Bermuda, because there's a lot. They're able to attract more money to come in, because they're used to getting a lot of their money through tourism, which has been shut down. So they're finding a way to kind of revitalize that, while also kind of giving Americans a way out of this craziness right now, and go to go live in Bermuda on the beach for a year. I don't know. We've been taking a hard look at some of the rental properties.
That's why you're wearing that Hawaiian shirt right there. Nick.
Yeah. I got these Bermuda vibes going on.
I mean, that's really the dream of it, right? And all the people that can do all their tech stuff remotely can go anywhere. They can live in Thailand and Laos and Bermuda and anywhere and just do their stuff remotely and be like, I'm just chilling on the beach today and just typing away and doing my thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a secluded area too, like Bermuda. I mean, that's kind of a nice place to be right now anyway as well too. Just I don't want any distractions. Get me the hell away from everything right now.
Yeah.
That's an attractive idea there.
It is.
What's the timeline? What's the timeline over there if we have to move podcast timelines for you, Nick? If you end up moving over there, that's going to be...
I think they are on actually more of a... I think they're either on East Coast time or they're on one more center, actually. So
Wait,
I might be 1 hour closer.
Bermuda's not on their own time zone entirely? In their own
exactly.
Bermuda Triangle?
I think it's always 5 p.m. there. It's 5 p.m.
Yeah.
It's always cocktail
5
hour.
5 p.m. for lunch.
Fuck yes. You're just going to be perpetually tipsy. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, if we go to Bermuda, you can bet on it, man. Yeah.
If you're in the Bermuda Triangle, things are going to get so haywire over there as far as connecting to the outside world. It's another dimension. So
I didn't think about that.
Oh yeah, what's the Wi-Fi connection going to be like in Bermuda?
Yeah,
it's called Fi-Wi over there.
That is the question. Yeah, I'm wondering if it needs to go through a secret government agency first. Right. Because, the Bermuda Triangle is a real thing, and who knows where the Wi-Fi has to go first,
Oh, dude, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, let me get my tinfoil hat here.
There you go. It's the only way for you to stay protected. Or
it is.
Yes.
Or maybe if you relocate there, you'll just stay young forever and you'll actually be able to be a tech genius for the rest of your life and then come back in 2075 and save the world.
Dude,
from
what if that's what
destruction.
Elon Musk did? That's maybe his secret. That's Elon
He like
Musk.
went to Bermuda for a long time.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just,
And he came out and he's like, all right, I'm 105, but I look like I'm 40,
he like looks around. He's like, wait, where are the electric cars?
Yeah.
Wait. So you're saying that we're not going to Mars yet? That's not a... Okay, cool. Reset, everybody. Listen up. I don't know what you did while I was gone.
Y'all fucked
wasn't
up.
right.
Y'all fucked up big time over here.
Yeah.
Man, that's one of the things. So if you go over there, that's what's gonna happen. Okay, here's a thought though. So
Okay.
if for both of you, like if you were given an opportunity, excuse me, to go live in a beautiful beach island like Bermuda, like something like that, you could live over there and you have a nice place, everything's set up for you, but you had to wear a tinfoil hat every day over there. You had to like do the crazy rituals of being like, I don't know, something. You had to do some kind of weird morning ass ritual as like your tinfoil hat, as a part of that community. Would you do it? Would you still do it?
Okay. I think it's like David Taft once said, what do you have to give up to achieve the action? And I think giving up dignity for even one day on the Bermuda beach, I would absolutely choose.
Just the fact that you're quoting a clowning professor at us right now just tells us about what we
Hey-o.
Exactly.
My response, Warren, without
Yes?
a doubt, 100%. I think I would rock that fucking tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd make that shit look good.
You make it look real good. Make it
Get some
look
flowers
real
in
good.
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if
Just
clown
not-
school taught me anything, it's that you're
Yes.
only as big of a fool as you want to be. And if you don't think you're one, then you ain't one.
Boom. That's some deep shit right there. That's some deep shit.
Oh, man. I wonder how much clown knowledge we can drop on this podcast today.
As much as we can.
I'm ready.
Well, Nick, I don't know if you know this, but I did go to clown school, like past David Taft.
Ooh, okay. I want to hear more about this because I didn't know this. So what is your, Lucienne, why don't you grace the world with your clown journey?
Yeah, man. Yep.
My clown journey. Well,
Yes.
I have just accepted that I am a clown through and through.
Yes, right.
But no, so I went to Cornish, like you all, and I did David Taft's class for 3 years. I had him for sophomore year and then for junior year. And then in senior year, he offered an extra class that I think was like advanced clown or like extended biomechanics or something like that. And so then I took that for senior year. I don't know if you guys still had it while you were there.
I think we did. I think I did that.
Yeah. So
Or at least took biomechanics senior year. But
yeah, there was something extra that David Taft offered. So I did all that and did my clown through David Taft. And I had this lovely little clown. His name was Barry. He was probably a mixture of like a super hyperactive, like extreme ADD little boy crossed with a baby T-Rex.
Yes.
And David, and like I had so much fun with David Taft. And he was just pretty much like, Lucienne, like if you just extend yourself in every single physical extreme that you can, that's your clown.
Yeah.
So like he was just fucking like had all these different layers of clothes that he was just like constantly trying to like push and pull through, and he had this little like rubber dinosaur that he was his friend, and he just wanted trouble and mess and everything. And my Lotsie was Barry trying to open up a pack of chocolate pudding, which you can imagine just got everywhere all over Ray's back.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And then after that, I lived in New York for 4 years and was living in New York and was trying to be an actor and wasn't really succeeding, but fell into the beverage and hospitality industry and like did it
Sure.
really, really, really fucking well and was at a crossroads of like, you're either a career bartender or you go back to school. So then I went to, I was thinking about like all these like private institutions, these like Yale and NYU and, you know, like smaller schools like that on the East Coast in New England. And then I thought, oh, wait a second, what about Europe? So I ended up going to Jacques Lecoq in Paris. And so I did their clown program for 2 years. So I studied.
Pretty damn cool.
Yeah. So I went, I mean, some people I explained that I went to physical theater school, you know, or like a French school that studies and experiments with space and movement and how bodies affect space on stage. And, you know, you can go into all like the technical scientific terms about physical theater.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I just say that I went to clown school.
Right.
Like,
it's
like,
all those things.
Yeah. Like, you know, Baskets on Hulu with Zach Galifianakis?
No.
I haven't actually watched that one yet.
Yeah, what is that? Give us a recommendation. What is that?
Zach Galifianakis goes to French clown school and is like the saddest clown and like returns back to like Bakersfield, California, and he's like a rodeo clown. So anytime I tell people that I went to French clown school, they're like, oh, Baskets, Zach Galifianakis, you're sad like him, aren't you?
You're sad like him. And you're like, yes, but we don't talk about it that much.
We don't talk about how sad we actually are.
Right.
Put on a happy face. Yeah, those are the best clowns. That's just it. That's just truly that. But it's really cool too. Like I'm really excited to have you on, especially Lucienne, because of your knowledge of Lecoq School and everything. Because and also for our listeners out there too, it's when we were going through college, Nick and I we would always hear about it. We studied through Moving Body by Jacques Lecoq, and we read that book, and we had a whole class based on that in our sophomore year. And then David Taft would also dive into that a little bit as well. So it was always like this kind of like Harry Potter-esque like feel for me of like a kind of school. Right. It's in Europe. It's over there, and they're just studying physical movement for however many years, right? Because didn't Lecoq? You were telling me that like he would sometimes bring you on. He would like they would cut you. They might bring you on for a third year, things like that. There too. Like there's a weird kind of grooming process sometimes to them, right?
Yeah, they like to shame you a lot, and but it's
French.
Yeah. But no, so technically what it is you're brought into the school, and you're usually between like 70 to 80 students in the first year. And then after the first trimester, they cut anybody that, you know, really isn't a good fit, that, you know, showed up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we're like, wait a second, what? You want me to be water? You want me to act like waves and fire? And you mean move my body? Like hold a stick in place and move it like this? You know what I mean? So they cut people in the first semester, after the first trimester, and then between first and second year, they cut you in about half. So they go from like 75 or so to about 30, no, maximum 35. And then you can do a third professional year, which you have to be invited back to do. And that's something that you basically redo the first and second year as like a teacher's assistant or as an observer. And this is the only way that you can get officially accredited and certified to teach Lecoq, is by doing that program at the school, that third year. From first to second year, they take you from about 75 people to about half. And like for me, for instance, like there was always the fear at Cornish that you were going to get cut out of the class, but it wasn't actually like that much of an impending fear. It was more like if you really fucking sucked, then you probably wouldn't get asked back. Whereas this was a literal, like, there's 35 spots and there are 75 of you.
Wow. How did you cope with that kind of like impending possible doom, you know, coming at you every day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's You try not to pee your pants. You drink a lot of wine, and you try to forget. I mean, you just like, oh God, I don't even know. How did I deal with it? By just being open to like whatever happens and happens for a reason. And the thing is that when you're studying at Lecoq, because of how much you put your entire body, heart, and soul into it, and it's everything you eat, breathe, and sleep, you think that it's Lecoq or nothing else. You know, that you get into this mindset that's kind of sick. But you get into this mindset that if you don't make it in Lecoq, and if you don't become a successful Jacques Lecoq student, you will never amount to anything as a performer. So that, like, just being able to take yourself out of that mindset and be like, well, you know, if I don't make it, it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna be a great actor. It doesn't mean I'm not gonna make a great theater. It just means that, like, this journey is done right now. You know?
I think that's great. It's a great way of looking at it. You know, you still come out with like an experience. You still came out with this kind of feeling. I know I used to struggle with that too when I was younger. And one of the reasons why I had to leave America for myself was just like, I was so scared of failing at what I was doing with my life. I was so scared of like, oh, what if I'm doing all this and then I get told that I suck, or I get told that I'm not going to make it, or I get told that I failed at this. And there was so much of that was like, and then that actually ended up hindering my art and performance, you know, like, because I was so worried about sucking, I ended up sucking, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? There's a freedom to that, what you're talking about, where it's just like, listen, my life is long, hopefully, God willing, you know what I mean? Like, my life is bountiful. There's so many things to be done in this world, and this is one part of my journey, and it's as long as it needs to be. And that's a cool way of looking at it, where it's like, and if I get on longer, that's great. I'm supposed to be here for a longer time. That's what it's telling me. Great. You know, but if not, then there's another thing waiting for me right down the line, you know?
Exactly.
That's very refreshing to look at. And one of the cool things too, I wanted to get on with you too, that I was super excited to talk with you about with Lecoq, is that you expressed to me that, you know, Lecoq School is also a school that gets like people from all over the world to go there. And you were saying that like not everybody spoke the same language. Like, you were putting groups that you all didn't speak the same language. You had to find ways to work around each other, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It was quite funny. And honestly, one of the best things about it too is that the Americans were close to the minority of the population of the students. But I mean, the teachers spoke to you in French. They don't speak to you in English unless they're making fun of you. Do you understand what I'm saying now?
You little bitch.
You little bitch. Putain.
You putain, man.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Tu casses mes couilles. That's, you break my balls.
Yeah, I know. Fuck.
Oh yeah,
we were cursing each other out.
Right.
That's what was happening.
Yeah. And then what I was saying to you guys, and I don't know if this got cut off, was that so it's like, as Americans, you're the minority, and so you are pretty much. I mean, my class in particular, we had people from Portugal, from the UK, from France, from Colombia, from Italy. We had a girl from Korea. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, you know, so it's like a lot of people, and you're surprised. It's shocking how many other countries speak multiple languages, and learn and grow up speaking multiple languages. You know?
Yeah.
and how just as Americans, we're just so far behind of like, we speak English, and you're lucky if you find if you grow up speaking another language, but you just kind of have to like figure out your way in like broken French and a little bit of English. And sometimes, people play translator, like people that speak Swedish can understand people that speak Norwegian. But they don't speak the same language, but they can understand each other. Or like Italian to Spanish, they can kind of understand each other.
Yes.
So that it's beautiful and so cool to see the way that these kind of languages interact and kind of coincide and kind of meld together, and just like it's inspiring that you're like, oh fuck, like I really have to learn another language, and it's so helpful. You know?
I'm imagining this very long game of telephone. From like French to Norwegian to Danish to Italian to Spanish to English.
It's like,
but
oh, sorry. I was just thinking like you set up a bit where it's like, okay, so all right, we need to achieve this thing, and it's like passed down the telephone, and then it gets right to the last person, and it's like, and then just punches the last person. Like the last person just punches the other person. It's like, you said that to me. Yeah.
You said what? I mean, I remember when I was like comfortable enough with my French that I started like learning swear words and like using them in like really cool ways. And I was working at a restaurant at the time with like a French guy, and like I was I was trying to be cool, and I was trying to like make a phrase where I was like swearing in it, and I was saying the word fuck, and then he just kind of looked at me and he was like, Lucienne, we don't say that. like we just don't say that sort of thing here. I was like, oh, sorry.
Oh my God.
I feel like so proud, and it's just immediate shame. Just so pride to shame. Just.
Dude, sorry, I had the same moment.
Sorry.
So when I was with when I was helping Richard over when he was doing the cheese market, right? And Lucienne and I have a mutual friend over in France. His name's Richard, and Maggie Lee.
Fucking coolest guy ever, by the way.
I love them so much. And
shout out to Richard.
Shout out to both of them. So they're amazing. And it was so funny because, it's early in the morning. We got done like partying that night before. And so I got back to my place of residence at like 3 a.m. And then Richard came back to pick me up to go to the cheese market at 6. And we are driving over there, and we were kind of just talking like broken English, broken French. He was helping me learn French, and I was helping him with some English. And he was like, "Well, are you ready for the day? Like, are you ready to sell some cheese and stuff?"
Sell some cheese.
I was like, oui, je suis très excité. And so I was like, I'm very excited. And so that means a totally different thing. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So he gave me this weird ass look. He was like, what the fuck? It's like 6 a.m. And because in French, I'm very excited is I'm very horny. So I'm just like over here telling this guy that I got a raging hard on, basically.
Yeah, dude, I'm ready, man. Let's go sell some cheese. I love cheese.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, no. That's not how you say it.
Yeah.
So I understand you. That's one of the also that that humility is something that's very important. I think within learning another language, you're like you don't have everything figured out. You gotta also.
Let's not miss the opportunity to make some more horny cheese jokes. Were you gonna sharpen that cheddar?
Yes, right.
The Swiss cheese didn't have any holes yet.
Right. No, there you go. Good.
Let's see.
Good.
I don't know. That's the only two I've got.
I
God.
can't.
It's that Morbier, real. I just like that line of ash in between that Comte. That line of ash that lays right between the two slices. Yeah.
Oh, actually,
Oh my gosh.
maintenant. There you go.
So if you could be any type of cheese, what type of cheese would you be?
The real questions.
Deep dives, deep thoughts. Nick, you go.
I would be brie cheese. Yes. So that I could always remember my wife, Brie. Yeah, that's why.
He actually married. Yeah, his wife is Brie. That's how much
His wife is named Brie.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
It took me a minute. But I was like, I think, okay.
They're in the room right now with you, aren't they? Is that what's going on here, Nick?
No, not at all. Yeah.
That's awesome. Brie cheese. That's fantastic. It is very delicious. I understand.
It's muy delicioso. And it goes well on crackers.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes. I would probably choose. I would probably use Comté. That was really good when I got to try it over there in France. Yeah. Like, I did not like cheese that much when I was in America, like before I left, and then I went to France and that changed everything. So it was like, wow, this can taste so good. And that's what happened.
Yeah, man. The French know their cheese. They know their cheese.
They do.
Man.
They really do. What about you, Lucienne?
Yeah.
What'd you choose?
Well, as previously mentioned, I dropped a name called Morbier.
Yeah.
Morbier. If I can just drop a little cheese knowledge here.
I'm ready. Let me get out my notepad, my cheese notepad here.
Morbier is Comté cheese, but it has a layer of ash in the middle.
Yeah.
So I like to think that it's classic, yet with a twist.
Very good.
A little funky twist with that ash in there.
Get that.
I feel so uncultured. I have no idea what Morbier's. What was the other cheese that it's like based on? See, I just know nothing about cheese. I also know nothing about wine. I know nothing about grapes. I'm just like sitting here in the dark, but I have just two connoisseurs. That's not French, is it? I don't know. Connoisseurs? Is that a French word? I also okay, cool.
Yeah,
all right, I'm picking up on it a little bit. I'll add that one. So now I know 3 French words.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just sitting here in the dark. I'm just like a Neanderthal. I really love burgers and beer. I'm like a expert. I wish. What's the name for the person that like knows wine? Sommelier. I could be a sommelier for beer and burgers.
Hey, that's legit. That's a legit job.
That's awesome. That is a legit job. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I encourage you to do that, Nick. I encourage you to go eat those burgers, drink those beers, and then talk about the accentuating tasting notes and pairings between each. That's how you do it.
Craft brew, man.
Right? Speaking of that, though, like, Lucienne, so you, we've been dancing around all this stuff right now, too, like going from clowning and Lecoq and stuff like that, too. But then you're talking recently about your other passion in your life, which has been within food and beverage industry and within wine specifically, right? And that's kind of where I first met you, is like when you were really starting to venture forth into this kind of new journey, right?
Yeah. So I'm now in wine, completely in wine. Hospitality just kind of sustained me through all of my art, and through Cornish and through living in New York and even in Paris. Hospitality has always been there. Just because it's easy for us people that are, fairly much extroverted and high energy and can handle people and can handle working on their feet and just, workaholics. Because we're, as creators and theater people, we're pretty much hustlers. So it was always there. And in France, I had just finished Lecoq, and I was, I had I had an international theater company. We had just done a residency in the UK and done this really cool experimental piece. But it just is so hard for it to be a sustainable thing, and it's so hard to figure out how to make money off of it, especially when you're abroad and especially when you don't speak the mother tongue like fluently or like perfectly. It's just a huge challenge. Right. And while I was living abroad and I was working in this restaurant, I had just kind of happened upon this role of managing a cocktail program and managing a bar of the restaurant I was working in. Just because, I had come from New York and knew a lot about bartending, a lot about spirits. And we had this beautiful wine program that I knew nothing about. So I ended up going to the sommelier that we worked with, and I was like, listen, I'll teach you about cocktails if you can teach me about wine. And so we got together, a couple of us, and we each brought a bottle in and, covered up the bottle and she started teaching us how to taste wine, how to smell wine, how to taste it, how to talk about it. And we were only doing French wines, but it was just kind of like this story that unfolded, and it was almost as if there was like a light bulb that switched on when you realize that it's almost like the epitome of art and science and storytelling and, creation. It's like, where do these grapes come from? Where do these vines come from? What's the geography like? What's the climate like? Who's the man or the woman that, tended to these grapes, that picked them? What was the journey that they went from the vineyard into the winery, and then they were stomped or they were pressed, and then they grew and they evolved and fermented into this beverage, into this liquid, that's so complex and nuanced based off of elevation and fog and sun and soil. And then it even comes to the point where it's served on the table. And when it's served on the table and it's enjoyed with people that you love or people that you don't know, there's storytelling about the product or about the wine. There's storytelling amongst you. There's a sense of community. There's a sense of trust. There's laughter. There's joy. There's sadness. There's tears. There's food. There's it's all of it. So to me, I see wine as storytelling and theater making, but just in a different lens.
Gosh, that was beautiful. Wow. Just you saying all that, I was like, wow, I went on a journey just myself. When we were talking about that. Yeah. It's really just quite incredible. The whole thing. I'm right there with you. It's like, that's what drew me to it too, was that, especially coming from a theatrical background and stuff. One of the things that always bothered me about with theater is that, and what I've learned to love about it now, is that theater is great. Either you get to create something, you put it together with a group of people, and however long it takes, you go through a rehearsal process, all these people to come together, you create the thing, and then it's gone.
Yes.
It's over. And there's a beauty in that. But one of the things I was like, I need to get something that's also outside of myself. At a certain point, that wine bottle's also going to be gone. But if it's good, but at a certain point though, there's like a level of it where you're taking an extended period of time working with these, or you're a part of this process in some way, shape or form, and then having something that's outside of yourself in a bottle, you're like, this is what I helped create. It's quite beautiful.
But even if you think about it, Warren, like when I came down to the Rhone Valley to visit you, and the way that we met Richard, to me, even thinking about that scenario and that moment and where we were and how that happened was such like a magical piece of time. And it was all because of wine. And we met this guy who fell in love with us because we were the only Americans in probably 100-mile radius. And they showed up in this tiny little like wine cheese festival, like winter fair. And then he's like, oh my God, you guys come here. And then we end up sitting with him for hours. And then, you know, it's like your host family's like, all right, it's late. We got to go. We're tired. And I like grabbed your arm and I remember looking at you and being like, we can't go, Warren. We have to stay. This is like, never going to happen again.
Yeah.
I was like, true. I don't care if we get an Uber. I don't care if we walk, but we are not going.
Yeah, we are hanging out and spending this time. That's exactly right. You know, well, that's what we deal with, right, is community and actually dealing with, like, when we experience those true moments of togetherness and of human connection, that's the precious stuff for artists and creators. You know, that's that's the true stuff that we try to find. And so I'm glad that you were there with me during that time, because it was like, this is a special moment right now. We are not ignoring this moment. And I was like, yes, you're totally correct. And it was amazing. And we fucking partied that night, so it was a great time. So
and it all came from storytelling and from wine. You remember, like Richard just kept opening bottles for us to taste, and he kept slicing cheese for us to taste, and he would tell us about this cheese, and he would tell us about this wine, and then, like, in turn, you know, we told stories about ourselves and why we were there, and, you know, who we were, and then all of a sudden it just started becoming like this community of these, like, Southern French dudes, like, you know, these old Southern French guys that are all like, what's going on over here with Richard and these two kids? Why is there people speaking English over here? You know, like, what, you know, that looks like fun. I'll bring a bottle. You know, so it was just like in the middle of fucking bumfuck France, you know, in the middle of nowhere, that we have, that Warren and I made friends with these, like, a champagne vendor. There was Richard, who was a wine and cheese vendor. And then there was the other guy, the bigger guy. What was he? He was like nougat or something like that.
He was selling that. Selling nougat and, like, truffle oils and all that. Yeah. He had quite an assortment. And also, by the way, like, later on he told me that he taught judo. so he was, like, teaching me, like, French judo later on when I was starting to help them, when I was helping Richard with selling the cheese, because we would run into each other all the time, because they all traveled together, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. He was teaching me some judo techniques. It was pretty funny. So yeah.
I mean, but it's it all just came from this community storytelling, and you know, it starts with the sharing of a glass of wine or the sharing of a bottle of wine, you know, and I think that you kind of caught me at a time, and it's this journey that I've kind of been going on over the last couple of years of opening my horizon and opening my definition of what it means to be an artist and to be a creative person in this time, in this age, and all of that, you know, because I think that we grow up with this idea of, like, I'm going to be a fucking actor. I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to have a theater company, and it's going to be like this, or I'm going to work in tech, or I'm going to be a real estate agent, and this is what I'm going to do. But to just kind of, like, let go a little bit. And as long as your core values are the same, so but being a theater person or a theater creator or a theater generator, and being somebody in wine, it's art, it's passion, it's community, it's, you know, it's the sense of security and sense of, you know, love, for lack of a better term, of, you know, being able to be with someone and sharing a moment, you know, and being vulnerable, you know.
You know, I'm hearing all these similarities. It seems like you've managed to blend the same values that you get from being a performer and an artist into this world of wine as well, and that the values are very, if not exactly the same, you know, very, very similar when it comes to, like, you know, because being in the moment is something that you have to do as an actor, and being, and, you know, all that invisible work, which is, I think, similar to what you were describing with the wine, right? Like, who picked it? When was it picked? What was the fog like? You know, what kind of dirt, what elevation, like all of those things. Like that's to me also taught, like, if I was to draw a parallel, that's the invisible work you do, right? Like how many times did I go over that monologue on the bus ride to school, or you know, how many different ways did we try the scene before we landed on this exact like rendition of it, you know, and all of that invisible work does show up in the final performance, right? Or in the performances, right? And I think that all of that invisible work that happened to the wine, right, like shows up when you drink it as well, you know, and when you share that, and especially when you're able to share a story of how the wine was made, and how the wine and who you're sharing it with, you know, all those things are pertinent to theater as well, right? Whether you're doing the show, it is a different feeling, right? If you're doing a show for 5 people, or if you're doing a show for 500 people, there's a whole different, you know, set of things that go on. And I'm sure that wine is the same. You know, if you enjoy a bottle in a crowded restaurant, it's going to be one thing. And if you share a bottle between like a couple friends on a hillside in France, it's going to be a different thing, you know? And the wine is going to in turn probably taste, feel, and be different for you during, depending on where you open it, where you drink it, and who you're drinking it with. Same with theater.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah. Like, like for instance, like, you know, you're in fucking Bermuda, and you have like one of the most, like you're sitting on the ocean, like on the beach with your wife, and you just paddleboarded or kayaked all day long, and you know you're like, you're kind of, you know, you were going through the jungles or whatever, and so it's like you're tired and you're dirty and you're kind of sweaty and covered, and you know, and you've had like an amazing day, and you crack open this bottle of like white wine, some Chenin Blanc, and it's like citrusy, and it's almost effervescent, and it has a little bit of like minerality to it, and you just share this magic moment, you know, and the sun is setting, and there's a little bit of breeze, and the sand is warm, and so that is the moment that you have that ties you to the flavors, the surroundings, the who, what, when, where, why. And that memory will be with you for forever until you open that same bottle of wine again, you know, in your home, you know, years later, and you can share that exact same memory of being like, do you remember when we drank this and where we were and what we were doing, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that is so wonderful. I've already booked my ticket to Bermuda during this whole conversation.
Seriously, Lucienne, I think you truly do have a gift of being able to talk about. Like, my heart has just been swelling this whole time. Like, I am falling in love with. I mean, I feel like I've always kind of had this connection with that, but I think that you're encapsulating it so much. Just like, you're finding all the different variables and finding that, you know, in the sense, everything that we share in is storytelling. And that's one of the things that I also really love about wine and performance, is that those were like the first 2 things that we did as human beings. You know, that's like the first 2 fucking things we did as like society, is like we told stories around a campfire and we put shit in the barrel to like fucking get drunk on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know, water wasn't very clean, but we had grapes, and we threw the grapes in a thing to eat later, and then all of a sudden it fermented and it created this liquid, and this liquid was cleaner to drink than the water. So hey, fuck it, like, let's keep drinking it.
Exactly. And I'm feeling great. It's one of those things. It's like it's innately a part of us, and I think that we can, you know, we can be able to find more of our humanity, more of our connection with each other by sharing in these special forms, you know what I mean? Whether it be through performance, whether it be through a craft piece of food that someone makes or something like that too. It's like, if we can only find a way to be able to share this kind of experience to people on a larger scale without having also the financial barrier. That's one of the things that always gets me, is like, you know, sometimes like that experience is, only tied to, all right, well, how much are you able to give for this? You know what I mean? How much are you able to afford this like special moment? But it's like, how do we be able to share and like going over to see this theater production, but how do we be able to make that an experience that most people can experience together and with new people, and to be able to share new stories and connect more. That's the kind of obstacle I always find, is like that we can overcome. I like to think of it as an obstacle because I think it is something to overcome. But yeah, that's one of the things that's always on my mind.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that that's kind of where I struggle. I've talked about this whole idea of like letting go and letting things happen, but I do have, struggles, in letting go. I think that that's partially why I talk about it so much, is because I'm trying to remind myself. But there's something about like this whole, it's all in the same world. How can it all be brought together between the art, the performance, this, like this wine, the art of the table, like there's some way, and I don't know how, but I see it in my head, but I just don't know what the words are, right. Of like, how can this all come together? How can we as a community evolve or come together to make that a reality, and how can it be sustainable, and how can you make a business off of it, essentially,
Right.
Well, I think that's one of the things that, as we're talking about, everyone is human, and so everyone has the history of like of somewhere in their background, like, telling stories and around a campfire and drinking wine or beer or whatever was being made. It's like that's something that we all like to do, and that's something that's like in everyone's blood, and in everyone's like just simple being, like the simple act of being human, like allows us to that I think it's this thing that we all kind of maybe want, or I'm not saying this very eloquently, but we all want to we all love that idea of being around a campfire, telling stories and drinking wine or drinking beer or sharing some sort of like food. And I think that one of the things that brings everyone together is that like telling stories and drinking and eating. Those are things that everyone likes to do. It's a peaceful activity that everyone can share. And like, not only that, but it's a way to experience like all different kinds of culture and all different kinds, eating like Ethiopian food, you kind of get a taste of what Ethiopia might be like, and what and eating French food, you get a sense of what France is like. And same with like wine or different kinds of liquor from different countries. You get a sense of what people like to drink and why, and a sense of that whole history gets like brought forward.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's dramaturgy. It's dramaturgy, of like tasting a wine tasting a wine or tasting a liquor or tasting a food that comes from that region and comes from that area gives you a taste of the history,
Right.
In the ancient world, in like, France and Italy, these countries that have been around a whole lot longer than the United States, like, I'll use France, for instance, just because I'm a little bit more familiar with it. But it's like you have certain types of cheeses that come from certain areas and certain regions that are AOC, that are, designated areas. So like Champagne has to come from Champagne, or blue cheese. There's a certain type of blue cheese called Beaufort. And it has to come from Beaufort, so it's like, so where there was churches, where there was religion was where there was money, and where there was money meant that the religious people, the religious leaders spent money on grapes for wine and for cheese. So you have like these little pockets, these little areas around in France, where like a certain type of cheese comes from and a certain type of wine comes from. And then you think about like, what do they have in, so it's like when you eat that cheese or you drink that wine, it's so typical, it's so standard for it to be like, oh, well, that's wine that comes from Rhone, or that's wine that comes from like Saumur, or, from Alsace.
Right.
You know, it's giving you the region and an understanding of what it's like to live there and what it is that they eat. And, you know, like for instance, the Languedoc wines that come from the south, you know, in the southern part of France, even a little further southern than the Rhone Valley, it's super, super, super rural. And the wines that they make are kind of country wines. And you know, they eat a lot of meats and they eat a lot of potatoes, and their wine kind of goes with it because it, you know, it pairs well with the food. You know?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So that's so interesting. I love that. And speaking of like Alsace too, I think this is one of the documentaries I think that we watched together was like Psalm into the Bottle, but they were talking about how that region, like recently, like as far as recently as like 100 years ago, like over like a little less than that, like World War II, and well, in both world wars, right? It was a territory that was being fought over, right? Because it's like Alsace is like right on the eastern border of France and Germany, right? And so that there are wineries in that region where you have 3 generations of people that, like, one year there's like the grandfather was Prussian, the next grandfather was German, not next grandfather, the grandfather is Prussian, the father is German, the son is French, and they're from the same. They're like they lived in the same place, right? And like and that those vines, that soil is also war-torn soil, right? And so what does that do to your grapes? You know, when you have the like ash and blood and like all that, like people fighting over each other, you know, what does that do to your vineyard? That's a whole nother kind of thing, and that's a whole nother history to talk about that's shown up in a bottle of alcohol, and you wouldn't really expect that.
I'm kind of imagining like really stressed out dirt right now.
I'm so torn. Am I German or am I French? I
don't know.
And I tasted this wine as having an identity crisis.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, but there is something too that I do want to bring up. I had this conversation the other day with a winemaking friend of mine whose name is Andy Young. Shout out to Andy Young, and he makes Marigny wines in Willamette Valley, Oregon. And he has an interesting background himself of like he was a professional drummer. You know, he has his degree in poetry and like went into advertising and then, you know, eventually found himself in wine. And we were having this discussion. He's pretty much like a one-man show right now, especially in the winemaking. I think he maybe takes on like one harvest intern a year. But when you are making wine and harvest between the months of August to October, November, depending on the ripening season, and then, you know, starting to make the wine, trying to get them into their barrels or their tanks so that they can start their little fermentation stuff. You're working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week. I've heard stories of winemakers that don't leave the winery for 36 to 48 hours. And so it and so it puts you in this state of stress, and it puts you in this state of fatigue, which sounds a lot like art school.
It does.
Where you're constantly having to continue to produce material or produce work, and you are sleep deprived, you're sleep deprived, you're frustrated, you're having to work with people and or, you know, for this instance, grapes, you know, you're trying to work with the grapes, you're trying to create something. And we're having this conversation of like, he was like, I was fucking tired. Like I was working 20 hours a day, sleeping 3 hours, you know, commuting 30 minutes, or just, you know, putting my like puffy vest down on the ground and sleeping under my desk. And he was like, it really separates you from, you know, the strong from the weak. of like, you have to make a choice because you have these grapes that are going to start fermenting, or you have to make an action with them, and hopefully it's going to be the right action, it's going to be the right choice for your grapes to continue to create a beautiful wine, or you're going to just get fucked, like you're going to come out with garbage. And how many times is it that we've been in that situation as creators, as theater makers, and for Lecoq and for Autocore at Cornish, it's that's the state that we live in for 4 years essentially.
Yeah, the stakes are high, right? That's kind of what we are getting dancing around. I definitely, from doing both theater school and doing a harvest full on, and it was crazy. I mean, in my case, like we ended up doing the harvest, but it was my first harvest, but I ended up being second in command of the whole operation.
No way.
Basically.
No way.
Well, because we had our cellar master, right, and he was great and stuff like that. But I was the closest one, like the person that was working there right after him, that's been there for 3 years. He recently left. And so I was the next in line. I was like, this is my first harvest ever. And they're like, well, you're going to learn fast, right? And
shit.
it is crazy the amount. There is definitely a correlation with that, because you're one, like you have everybody that is on this, you're on this thing together, and things need to go in this certain way, and you have very strict timelines, just like how you do in theater school too. Like you have to get this autocore assignment done, you have to be able to create this piece to be able to you need to have everybody bringing all this stuff together, and if you don't have all the right stuff together, then it's like we need to get that thing in order to create the piece. Just in the same way with harvest. And the only thing that I would say is maybe a little bit my harvest might be a little bit more difficult, is that if you fuck up even a little bit, that's probably like you see like a couple of grand just go down the drain, like before your very eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's nuts, because it's like all right, I'm moving around this crate of grapes to be able to dump into the presser. All right, so there's that. And then like, oh, we have to, I accidentally once blended a white wine juice, like I believe it was, I forget exactly, like Sauvignon Blanc, and I put together Cabernet Sauvignon into the same tank accidentally, and it was not good. they got very mad at me. But luckily they stopped it in time. But, there's just literally so much going on. Like I was pumping into 6 different tanks at the same time with different wines. You know what I mean? And so you're like going all these different directions. There's this one story too, because like you have all these trucks that are also coming in too, with all these other grapes, all this stuff, and juice, like already pressed grape juice coming in from Washington. And my friend who works there, a dear friend of mine, Fabian, we got a truck in of all this juice, right? And so he was kind of, and like Fabian and I were working kind of hand in hand together, and we had some aides from like the packaging that came over to help during harvest, because it's all hands on deck. And so we're like, all right, we set up the pumps and everything to go into a tank inside. And so we're like, all right, you guys, we handed it off to these guys, like, make sure just that the tank goes well. Let us know when the truck gets emptied. And they're like, okay. And so we're off doing all these other things, running our own shit. And then we look over like half hour later, and they're like, is that truck still there? You know what I mean? Because we got another truck coming in. And so Fabian went to go check it out, and they're like, yeah, it hasn't moved at all. And we're like, okay, why? Like the pump is on full blast, I don't know why. And so, well, it was on like 50%, and Fabian was like, oh, well, let me just turn it up. So he just turned up the pump, and apparently one of the valves inside were closed. Right? So that was what was happening. And so the valve was closed in this tank, and Fabian turned it up all the way, and just immediately the pump exploded with wine. All over, like the hose itself, just like boosh, and like he just got drenched with wine, and we were all like running to scramble to like save it, like to stop it and everything like that. But then it's like there's this open hose. Oh my god, we were all running like madmen, just like trying to save this. And we ended up getting it saved, and we had to get another hose and stuff. But like, you just see Fabian just like covered head to toe with just grape juice.
And fucking grape juice.
And he's like, yeah, and you're like, I gotta go home. You know, well, actually, he couldn't go home because we had to get more shit done. So he's just all sticky, and he has to keep working. And
man, so poor guy.
The stakes are just so high because that's money right there too. That's a whole other side of it. You have to just like, we got to get this done as quickly as possible, and we're going to be here for upwards of 20 hours. You know, it's a whole time. It's crazy. I miss it.
I think that it's just so interesting that like we as like creators and theater people that are like just like we're engaged. We are engaged people that we're there with you and we're in this together and like let's get the challenge, let's do it. And that's kind of what it is too with winemaking. And it's just like you're just there. You can't be anywhere else but right there. You know, and I think that it's, you know, similar to theater people, winemaking people are, you know, we're all a little sense of crazy, and you know, it's like it's like that thing of like if you know, we just can't do anything else. Like this is just how we are. We are passionate, we're engaged, and we're like ready to get shit done.
Totally.
Yeah. You know,
it's exactly right on all that, and it brings you together too, because like once you do it, there is that level of we did this together, and whether it be a performance, whether it be making a bottle of wine or something like that, like, or even like at a restaurant, if you're like, we got through that crazy ass shift. Doing that work together is what connects you, even if like you're not friends with some of the people there. That's one of the things that I think that we need more of in this world, because things are so disconnected because of technology and social media. All these things is like what we need to get back to is, what does it feel like when we actually are put to the grindstone and have to rely on each other again? You know, we have to like, we are both here accomplishing the same goal. I know we don't agree on the same things, but we got to get this done. There is a level of camaraderie that you come out of there with, that even if so much like, all right, maybe we're not more friends, but at least there's more of a respect there. And I think we need more of that. Right?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. How do you work towards a common goal and set aside your personal differences and just work towards the common goal?
Right. You know? Yes. It's succinctly put. That's exactly it. That's what we should strive for, you know, especially nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, that's been something that's been so lovely, just being in the arts, you know, and always, I know I personally prefer to work in a group and work with at least like one other creative partner because of that sort of bonding that goes on. And I think, you know, that is such an important aspect to, you know, and I think anybody who works in a job where they need to rely on other people understand what it means to move past your differences to achieve a goal. You know, I think that's something that most people who work understand.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, you know, for me, that's something that I definitely prefer to be in a group setting or a one-on like with someone else, because that bonding and that it allows you to, you know, and I think it makes the work or makes the wine or the food better in the end because of that. Because you were able to rely on one another, and because and maybe that sort of bonding and camaraderie, you know, as you were saying, becomes a part of the story of the wine or the food or the performance, whatever it may be, and that'll show up in the end product.
Yeah,
hopefully.
But I also want to say too. That is in particular with theater generators, people that have been generating and creating theater. Excuse me. That there is a certain level of leadership that I think that we have learned and created in ourselves that is kind of a rare thing that I don't find very often in other scenarios, of knowing when to be a leader, how to be an effective leader, when not to lead, and how to keep the emotional stability or excitement level in the group. You know, keeping the group focused. Right. Because managing restaurants, keep the morale high. Like, how can you have fun and work hard at the same time?
Yeah, totally.
You know, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we've all learned, just trial by fire. It's because we've been in those situations for so, week after week, month after month, and trained in those situations every day. That makes us kind of experts on what it means to be in a group dynamic and how to participate in that group. And I think it comes naturally to us to find the most productive way to be, depending on the scenario, group of people, task at hand, when to be a follower, when to be a leader. All those things just happen naturally for us because we've had so much practice at being in those scenarios, and so many times that we've failed, right? So many times that we were the leader when we shouldn't have been, or that we followed when we shouldn't have followed, or that we had maybe an aggressive leadership tactic when what we really needed was some everyone needs to calm down and like come back to earth, so. And through those failures, we learn how to be good leaders and how to be just good participators in a group activity that requires a common goal.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing too. I think that's a great skill that, theater makers, people that, and like most people that I think work in groups, right? And that their careers are in groups, is like as their main priority within what their job is, right? And so I think that definitely with theater and like with art and everything like that, it's the only, I think one of the main differentials about it is that with theater and art making, not only you're doing the art making, but you're also analyzing the how we're making the art making. It's like you're like doing the thing, but you're also like, but what is this tactic that we're using at the moment? And we're like, shut up about that right now. We gotta get this done. But it was like,
shut up about that tactic, man.
You keep going on and on about this tactic. Let's just get the fucking thing done. But that's also what that art school does too. It's just kind of like, but how are we doing it too is also one of the questions that we constantly ask ourselves while doing it. And so that's that does aid us later on because it gives us tools and gives us communication techniques on like, okay, so this didn't work when we did it this way because of these things. So if we maybe change the variable a little bit, like you're working out equations on how to work together, basically, right? So it's definitely something that I appreciate within my growing up and within my education, my pedagogy. But it's I think a lot of people, especially that have that same kind of work dynamic of working with a group, share that experience. But I think to your point though, Nick, is that nowadays a lot of us work primarily like what's the word, as an individual. We just work in solidarity. Right? Rather than
especially right
community.
now.
Yeah. Especially right now, especially because like we're all fucking on our computers doing stuff because of where it's a fucking pandemic. But I mean,
like to that, just as a little side note to that, like what blows my mind is like how often have you said to yourself and how often have you had so many professors and teachers like drill into your brain of like, get away from the screens, like we're losing, sense of, inner person to person connection, like we need to come back face to face and for forever. And then all of a sudden, like now the entire pretty much last 6 months or whatever since March, we are solitary and in front of our computers and using screens to connect and to be with other people. Like, doesn't that just kind of like blow your mind a little bit?
It does. It's totally contradictory to what we've been educated in, but that's also kind of the blessing in itself, right? Is that part of like what moves us forward in art making is breaking the law, that breaking the rules that have been put forth for us and saying like, well, I know this is what we were told to do, but what if we did it this way? And you twist this thing and it's like, oh, look at that. We were able to have a podcast in which we're all living in 3 different areas of the world. And we're able to have a conversation and talk about these things that we're able to do. We're able to do like telephone, like fight choreography. We're able to have music videos where people come together from different parts and like create a soundscape through that. It just being different and like it's pretty, and disparate is the word I'm looking for. That's we're finding new ways, and that's one of the biggest things I am as an optimist, is that as artists we always will find ways to achieve the action, but it is also good to remember the traditions on how we do that and what we're doing it for, you know.
It's like, I don't know how to get past this like very weird feeling that technology still gives me, though. Like, it's great, and I'm happy to be using these things, because they're allowing us to achieve a form of connection and a form of of what we were able to get before with in-person contact. But there's still this weird plasticky feeling that I personally cannot shake, even with like, and it's great. I think one thing it's allowing us to do is learn that, because thank God, these tools were invented before we had this crisis, right? Thank God the internet is around. Yeah. Thank God we have like, Facebook Messenger call, which we're on right now, right? And all these other things, and that we can share files and all that stuff. Like, thankfully that the infrastructure has been there, right? Which is nice, because now everyone knows how to use it because they've been forced to.
Right.
Right.
But at the same time, I definitely miss going to band practice and like playing along with a live drummer, right? Like, although I can send a guitar file over to a drummer and he can send me the beat that he came up with, and then we can send that to the bassist, and then we can send that to the singer. Like, it's great and it works. Like, that's the part that's good. Like, it works, and it works okay. But there's something that you do definitely lose by not being in the same room with those people, because there's like, it's just like impossible, I think, for technology to emulate
there's nothing
the real connection. But at the same time, because I think we were trained on how to make that connection real without technology, it allows us to be creative with it. But I don't know.
It's a tool, right? It's not a substitute for what we're doing, and that's a great distinction to make, because just to your point, there is nothing like the experience you get when you're in a scene with somebody and you're looking straight into their eyes and they're looking right into yours, and you're you're there and you're achieving this action together. You're telling the story together. There's nothing like when you actually cheers a glass of wine with each other and you take that sip and you are in real time together analyzing that bottle of wine. You know what I mean? Like, and enjoying it. So I agree with you. Absolutely. There's just something about humanity that it's like, we need to be together. You know what I mean? We need to be actually together. So,
It's okay. And like when
Oh, okay. I was going to go ahead. I was going to take a left turn.
Great. Yeah. You go what you're saying, Lucienne.
I was just going to say that it's hard to think about. It's hard to conceptualize what the future holds for the arts, and it's hard to conceptualize what, as art makers, what that means for us. Because it's like, for instance, like thinking about what industries took the largest hits, or what industry is going to have to evolve and going to have to change as COVID, hopefully comes to an end. But it's like the arts are one of those things that people are not talking about enough.
True that. And it's one of those things too. I don't know what your left turn was, Nick, but just go along with that. It's and that's kind of where I'm interested to go as well there, Lucienne. Is just like especially for the arts right now, and I know that there's a couple ideas that are being tossed around, especially with like Broadway and stuff like that too, that they're trying to like get more money to artists during this time. But even then, like, and I do support that. I do think that these artists do need to get supported, because the whole industry just got destroyed for this time being. But that's the thing, though, is like, well, how long is it going to be destroyed for? And it's starting to get to that point where it's like, it's making me feel like, what, does Broadway have to go away for a while? Like, is there going to be like a new Broadway that arises once we are able like to come from the ashes of this? Because there's part of me that thinks like some of these theaters are just going to run down. I don't want that to happen, but part of me feels like that's just going to be inevitable, because they don't have the income. And some of these theaters, restaurants, things like that, they operate at a capacity where they're just heads above water.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like,
exactly.
And then it's all right, oh, now we're below water and now we drown because this is what our model has been, So I do wonder with you, like, what is there going to be a new Broadway that happens? Is there going to be a new, new set of restaurants that come up together? It's hard questions for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's also like what comes out of the rubble, and when will we stop creating rubble, right? Like, when will this thing take a turn? It's just impossible to know.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I've been watching so many friends over the last, couple of weeks, shifting careers. Like, I have one good friend of mine in Seattle who is going to go learn how to work construction. I have another friend who started managing a bakery. He's a stand-up comedian, and now he's managing a bakery. I had another girlfriend that was, I have another girlfriend in New York who is applying for an office manager position. And for me, for instance, like, I was managing a tasting room before COVID happened. I was managing a tasting room in the East Bay for a natural winery. And when the tasting room closed, I lost my job. And so, my response to that is I'm now, I'm going to go work a harvest in Sonoma County. And I'm like, well, I can't sell wine. It's unsafe to work in a restaurant. I can't work in a bar. I was like, I might as well just go learn how to make it and run away to, outside of the city and go live in wine country.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, you're going to go do a harvest?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm so excited for you.
I start in 2 weeks, man. It's really going to be so fun.
I'm so fucking pumped for you. That's going to be awesome. It's truly one of the best things I've done in my life is doing a harvest. Yeah. It's so cool. I definitely recommend it. I think that getting to your point is that as long as the artists survive, the art's going to survive. Right?
Yeah.
As long as we take our grind, get our nose to the grindstone, get by, we will find new opportunities. We just have to keep searching for those opportunities and keep giving ourselves the ability to live, the ability to do what we got to do to get by. And who knows what happens in time, but when that time comes, we got to be ready. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it goes to. Nick, what were you going to even ask? Like, we just fucking went totally on another thing.
Well, no, I was saying, like, Lucienne, you're an expert in clown and in wine. I was wondering, like, if there was ever a time where you've imagined or dreamt up a bottle of wine that would make someone laugh.
Oh my God, what a great question. What a great question. Is it because the wine is funny? Or is it...
I don't know. I feel like if we tell the wine to be funny, it won't be. So I don't know. Right. It just has to be already. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought you would be the probably expert of the world in how to make a funny wine bottle. Yeah. Or a funny wine.
How to make a funny wine.
Yeah. Do you like laugh with the grapes as they're growing up and like
I like
teach
that.
them how to move in the wind the right way and
you tell them jokes while they're growing. Each night when you're tucking them into bed, you read a couple jokes. When the wine is fermenting in the tanks or the cuves, you can I don't know, sprinkle confetti over the top of it, or
Totally.
Like, when they're being planted, do you like put some speakers and then like play a Mel Brooks film into the soil, get them going?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. And then whenever you walk through the vineyards, you have to walk in a silly walk.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
You have to do a silly walk. I love it.
It's like the rules require you to walk in a silly walk anytime you're in this land.
Yes, absolutely. I can imagine like taking people on like a winery tour and like then having to have this this family from wherever have to learn how to silly walk through the thing. Like, okay, no, the only way you can do the rest of this tour is if you just walk.
If you do this, you're helping the wine grow the way we want it to. So help us do this and also get outside of your own fucking comfort zone. Fuck societal norms.
Right?
You're out in the fucking vineyard.
Fuck societal norms, man.
Yeah. We're going to get drunk together later anyway. Come on.
Yep.
We're going to be walking funny anyway. So, like, why not do it now?
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
I love that too. So
sell it with like a red nose on it, on the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. I'm sure there's got to be a wine bottle that's got a clown nose on it. I'm sure there is. I feel like I must have seen one. Yeah, I feel like we might have had a bottle of that together sometime.
We did, Warren. Yeah. We did actually.
Yeah, we did.
It was Christmas, and we were at my friend's apartment,
Christmas
and we were watching
awesome.
It's a Wonderful Life and drinking a bottle with the clown nose on it.
Yeah. I think we took a photo. So I don't know. Lucienne and I have had some adventures. Tell you what. So yeah, no, I think I'll find that photo because I'm sure that we took a photo of that and we sent that to Richard. So, yeah, that was.
So what you're saying is someone's already beat us to this idea.
Yeah,
There's already
goddamn
one
it.
But like it could be like the icon for this podcast. It'll be that because there's like this like droplet of red wine that's coming down the label of it, and it's like this clown with like his hands on his face and this like sad nose and these scary eyes.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right.
You probably get them to sponsor the cast.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna send it to you guys.
You should.
Yeah.
Send us each a bottle.
Let's contact the winemaker and have him send us a bottle.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lucienne. You're so nice. You're so sweet.
You're welcome. But I would say I would highly recommend that like clown school was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. But it has made me 100% the person that I am today, and the person that takes confident risks, is not afraid to suck, is not afraid to fail. And I think even plays like, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what it is that you do, but you just have this like level of like, it doesn't matter because you've already seen the worst. You've already made such a fool of yourself, and like it doesn't even matter. Like you just do it with laughter, and you just do it with fun and positivity and hard work, and you're just kind of like, fuck it, I can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
inspiring. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's inspiring as fuck. That's great.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're ever, yeah.
Oh, no, say what you're going to say.
I was just going to say, if you're ever curious about clown school, you should like just Google, like into the Google search bar, French clown school. And like the first 3 articles that pop up are about French clown school was the hardest fucking thing I've ever done in my entire life. What I learned in clown school. Like, I thought I was going to die in clown school. Thank God I'm still alive after clown school.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Last thing that I think one of the greatest gifts that you've ever given me, Lucienne, was actually taking me over to the Lecoq School and being able to be in the Grand Salle was so cool. That was like the Hogwarts for me, was being able to see just like where all this theater happens, you know what I mean? And where all this like new experimentation goes and stuff like that. That's been here for a very long time. It was a really cool thing. So I appreciate you for doing that.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like that room. I mean, we're talking about history. We're talking about like when the walls breathe, and there's so much like when the walls have seen, so many hundreds of people and so much creation and so much life. Like that's what it is. I mean, Lecoq taught there, and it's on like this unassuming like, busy street in like, it's not the 9th, it's the, God, I don't even remember anymore.
Was it like the 12th arrangement?
No, it wasn't the 12th arrondissement. It was Rue de Faubourg-Saint-Denis, over by Gare de l'Est and Gare du Nord. We and it's like there's no there's no sign, there's no big sign, there's no anything. It's just this blue door and this little like metal placard that says L'École Internationale de Théâtre Jacques Lecoq, and like the little picture of the little mime guy dancing. And you walk down this long hallway, like courtyard, and then there's these double doors, and it takes you into this big old like gymnasium that used to be a boxing ring where people would come and watch boxing matches. And it's just like the ceiling is falling out, and you know, every once in a while you'll be sitting and watching some improv happen, and like a little piece of like cement will fall from the ceiling and like hit the ground.
Oh my God.
And you know, it's like, oh yeah. And there's like masks that Lecoq used to work with, and there's all these structures that Lecoq used to work with, and photos of Lecoq, and like his children still essentially run the program. His daughter is the director. He's got one son that's an archivist. He's got another son that does the tech, you know, and it's just, there's so much history, and there's just been so much that's there, and the family still thrives. And people talk about knowing Lecoq, and people talk about, you know, like what happened after he died, and where, and like what, you know, his wife took over, and then who became the director after that, and who became the head teacher. And there's like all this, like the weird drama that goes around with it as well. But
of course,
and then you're also like there in it, and seeing how it's trying to evolve, and seeing it grow, and seeing how it like advances with the students, and it advances with the study of it, and you know, who's continuing the experimentation, who's continuing the active study that Lecoq started and was doing. So it was, you know, it was super rich and super beautiful, and just like, you know, being in there, being in his office, sitting in his office, you know, while you have your two head teachers that are telling you, are you going to make it or are you not, you know, and you're like fucking nervous as shit, and then you're like, oh, this is Lecoq's desk, oh my God, this is Lecoq's office, oh, he sat there, oh my God, whew, you know.
Yeah, totally geeking out, man.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So Lucienne, with all this that we've kind of talked about, this has just been an awesome conversation. Like I'm like gonna sit down, I'm gonna write, I'm gonna watch I'm gonna learn some French. I'm gonna do I'm gonna find some bottle of wine to drink. I'm gonna go do that. Yeah. But with all that we've talked about, like ancestry and community, art, making together, and you know, working on the harvest and all this stuff, like, so where do you see the positive, like, if out of all this like craziness that's happened, this crisis that's been going on, you know, within this world and country pandemic and everything involved, like, if you were to foresee like the greatest positive change to come out of this to lead into this next renaissance, what would you think it would be?
That's a question.
I know.
That is a question. What is the most positive thing that's going to come from this, for the renaissance that is going to happen after COVID for the artists? Yeah. Is the question.
From your experience, what would you say?
Oh, God.
If you were to guess.
I think it's going to be a lot of the unexpected. I don't know if it's going to be really fuzzy, warm art. I think it might be a little bit more like... Actually, no, it's going to have the two extremes. It's going to be one extreme that's really fuzzy and soft and like makes you feel good. And then there's going to be some scary, scary stuff.
Wow.
But you know, because it's like, it's, I don't know. Because you can't have one without the other. If there's...
You have like an extreme escapism and an extreme realism kind of thing.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the only reason why I can kind of like come up with a reason why that would be is that if you take a look at like, you know, what's happening politically with Donald Trump and like Black Lives Matter and everything like this, that's so important. You're having these people that are fighting so hard and that are, you know, needing to talk and needing for the change and needing for us to change what it is that we know for in the system. And then on the other side, you have these weird people that like for us, they don't exist because we're in this, we're artists. So all of our people that we surround ourselves are like-minded like us. They're liberals, they're inclusive, they're of the LGBTQA community, they're people that are forward thinking. And then you forget that there's this whole other side, these people that are anti-maskers, these people that think that COVID is a hoax, that think, Donald Trump is the best thing that we can do for our nation. So it's like, you can't have one without the other, which is the biggest thing the biggest realization that I've come to personally with this. So that's kind of makes me wonder and makes me pose the question, at least because I don't know, but is the art going to reflect that you're going to have these two major extremes?
Right.
And
can I ask you? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Well, that makes me think too. Like, just from you making that that dichotomy there, do you think that we'll be able to come together with that again? Because I think that it's funny because I grew up in a very conservative area. I grew up over here, and it's interesting for me because I come from these both worlds, and do you think that we'll be able to come together as again? Is that possible?
I really hope so.
Yeah.
I really, really hope so.
Me too.
We have to evolve. We have to evolve, because otherwise we will not continue to exist. And I have my doubts. I have my moments of fear and my moments of doubt, but I think maybe that's why, I fight so much for what it is that I'm fighting, of wine and the art of the table and the community and love and support. I think because I believe so strongly that it's something that we have to evolve and grow to.
Yeah.
And
I think we can do it.
Yeah.
I hope we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because
Lucienne,
we're all just we're all just these little, spirits and human vessels that are going on in this world and on a journey, right?
And I think too, what you're saying as well, that daring to suck, daring to fail for what you believe in. You know what I mean? I'll dare to I believe in what this is going to be. I'm right there with you. I agree that we have to come together at some point, or else it's not going to work. And, it's even if it is pretty pessimistic, you know what I mean, as an outlook, I got to keep holding on to myself personally. I got to keep holding on to the optimistic idea that we can come together. And if it fails, okay, that's how our story is. But it's I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to try to bring us together, and I think that other artists, I think, are feeling the same way in some ways. So, that's given me a lot to think about, I think.
And there's the whole thing of artists use their creativity and they use their medium as a way to express, as a way to help them move through things emotionally, if you have this surging anger, what do? Do you run? Do you write? Do you dance? Do you listen to music? Do you, what is it? How do you express yourself? And that's your form of creativity.
Right.
For me, it's been just moving my body. It's getting on a bicycle and bike riding for 10 miles, or putting on my headphones and just dancing, or getting in my car and just driving and thinking, or writing, or whatever it is. But that's the way that I deal with these intense urges. And so as artists, maybe because we've been spending all this time, and, artists are going to have to find new ways to express themselves. Dancers are going to find new places. Maybe there's going to be a whole lot more dance on film that's going to be happening. Theater, maybe it's going to be outdoor theater. Maybe I feel like there's going to be a lot of experimental performance art happenings in outdoor spaces, and past and even more and different than just plays, but kind of this like moving through the space where it's all open air and going, moving through a forest or through, a closed down, like a street that's been closed off, or, a beach or something, it's just going to be like much more experimental. Think like, Robert Wilson and his happenings that happen in a desert or something.
Yeah. Right.
I know I kind of just like went back to another question that you asked me.
I think that.
Oh, that's good.
It is
and I
good.
think that kind of like plays into. I think that's true because one thing that millennials and Gen Z really value and are willing to spend money on is experience. And I think we are more likely to go attend a festival in the woods where there's going to be experimental arts, going on, because of the experience part of it, right? Because you're going to get to say you did it, you're going to experience it, and that's worth it to, our generations. So, I think that kind of art being coming into the main, into the mainstream is inevitable. So I think it's very likely that'll be the next thing for sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, I am inspired. I have a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I feel so like rejuvenated from this conversation. Lucienne, thank you so much for being on with the podcast today.
You're so welcome, you guys. This has been super fun for me.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you. Yeah, we hopefully will have you on again in the future sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on like after you do the harvest sometime, because like I want to hear what you think about between harvest life and theater class. You know what I mean? I want to see what you think about that.
I love the group community. Like we're all gonna be tired and work our butts off, and we're gonna make something fun.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure to save you both a couple bottles.
Yes.
Woo.
Yes. Awesome. All right. We'll take a trip down there. Awesome, Lucienne. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucienne.
Everybody, thank
You're
you.
so
Thank
welcome,
you for
you guys.
listening.
Thank you for listening, you guys.
Yeah.